The rain had stopped less than an hour ago when Officer Ethan Cole drove his patrol SUV down the narrow country road outside Blackwood. The storm had left the fields, soaked the trees dripping, and a heavy mist hanging low over the ground. Rex sat in the back of the vehicle, perfectly still. The 6-year-old German Shepherd was Ethan's police K-9 partner, and Rex was known for one thing above everything else: he almost never made a mistake. That was why Ethan immediately noticed when Rex began barking. Not a normal alert bark. It was deep, aggressive, and relentless. Ethan slowed the SUV. "What is it, boy?" Rex pressed his nose against the rear window and stared toward a large wooden barn standing alone beyond a field. There were no lights, no vehicles, no people. Just an old red barn surrounded by wet grass and a broken wooden fence. Ethan pulled over and opened the rear door. Rex jumped down and immediately dragged Ethan toward the barn. Easy. But Rex wouldn't slow down. He stopped several yards from the barn and barked again. Then again. And again. Ethan looked around. The property had been abandoned for years. According to the county records, the barn belonged to an elderly farmer who had died nearly a decade earlier. There was no reason for anyone to be there. Ethan called Dr. Sophia Bennett. Sophia was an emergency physician who had worked with Ethan and Rex during several previous cases. She wasn't a police officer, but her medical knowledge had repeatedly proven valuable when investigations involved injured or missing people. 20 minutes later, her SUV appeared at the edge of the field. She stepped out wearing a dark jacket over her medical scrubs. "What happened?" Ethan pointed toward the barn. "Rex won't stop." Sophia watched the dog carefully. Rex was standing, completely rigid ears, forward eyes locked on the barn's side wall. Has he done this before? Never like this. Sophia walked closer. Rex immediately moved between her and the barn. She stopped. "That's interesting." Ethan looked at her. "What?" "He's not reacting to something outside." She pointed toward the wall. "He's reacting to something inside." Ethan slowly approached the barn door. It was chained shut. The lock was covered in rust. He tested it. It didn't move. Rex began barking even louder. Ethan shined his flashlight through a crack between the wooden boards. Nothing. No movement. No sound. Just darkness. Sophia stepped beside him. Maybe there's an animal trapped inside. Ethan shook his head. Rex would normally sniff around for an animal. He's staring at one specific spot. Rex suddenly turned and ran toward the rear of the barn. Ethan and Sophia followed. The dog stopped beneath a small boarded-up window. He began scratching violently at the ground. Ethan crouched. There were fresh scratches in the wet soil. Sophia's expression changed. "Ethan," what she pointed. Beneath the mud were fresh footprints. Someone had recently walked around the barn, and suddenly the empty barn didn't seem empty anymore. Ethan carefully examined the footprints while Sophia held her flashlight over the muddy ground. There were at least 2 different sets of tracks. One belonged to a heavy work boot, the other was smaller. Both led toward the back wall of the barn, then they disappeared. Rex continued scratching at the soil. Ethan cleared away the mud with his gloved hand. A metal object appeared beneath the surface. It was a small rectangular plate. He pulled it free. A faded symbol had been carved into the metal, a circle surrounding the letter B. Sophia stared at it. Blackwood maybe. Ethan stood and walked around the barn. The main doors were secured from the outside, but the rear wall looked different. Several wooden boards had been replaced recently. He pressed against one. It moved. Ethan pulled his flashlight closer. Behind the boards was darkness. Someone opened this. Sophia looked at Rex. The dog was already staring through the gap. Ethan removed 2 more boards. A narrow opening appeared. Rex immediately squeezed through. Rex Ethan followed. The inside of the barn smelled of wet wood dust and something metallic. The main room was empty except for old farming equipment, but Rex ignored all of it. He moved directly toward the far wall. Then he stopped. He barked once. Ethan examined the wall. There was nothing unusual. Sophia noticed a line in the wooden floor. Look, a trapdoor. Ethan pulled at the metal handle. It opened with a loud creak. Beneath it was a narrow staircase leading underground. Sophia stared into the darkness. That's not on the property records. Ethan drew his flashlight and descended carefully. Rex went first. At the bottom was a concrete corridor. Old electrical wires ran along the ceiling. The walls were damp. Then Ethan saw something that made him stop. A child's red backpack sat against the wall. It looked new. Sophia crouched beside it. She didn't touch it. There's a name. Ethan leaned closer. Emily Harper. Sophia's face changed immediately. That's the missing girl from last month. Ethan looked at her. You're sure? Sophia nodded. I treated her mother at the hospital. Rex suddenly growled. The sound came from deeper inside the corridor. Ethan raised his flashlight. Rex. The dog moved forward. A few seconds later, he stopped in front of another door. It was made of heavy steel. There were scratches around the lock, and beneath the door was a thin line of fresh mud. Someone had been inside recently. Ethan reached for the handle, locked. Sophia whispered, If Emily is in there... Ethan looked at Rex. The dog stood perfectly still. Then he barked once at the steel door. This time, something answered from the other side. A faint knock. 3 slow knocks. Sophia covered her mouth. Ethan's hand moved toward his radio. Emily, silence. Then another 3 knocks. The girl was alive. Ethan immediately called for backup, but the radio signal inside the underground corridor was weak. He tried again. Static. Sophia knelt beside the steel door. Emily, no response. She leaned closer. I'm Dr. Sophia Bennett. If you're in there, you're safe. We're going to get you out. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then they heard a faint voice. Don't open it. Sophia looked at Ethan. Why? The voice whispered. She'll come back. Ethan's expression hardened. Who's she? No answer. Rex suddenly turned away from the door. His ears pointed toward the corridor behind them. Someone was moving upstairs. Ethan immediately switched off his flashlight. The 3 of them stood in complete darkness. Footsteps crossed the wooden floor above. Slow, careful. Someone had entered the barn. Sophia whispered, We aren't alone. Ethan nodded. He motioned for her to stay beside the steel door. Rex moved toward the staircase. The footsteps stopped. Then came the sound of a door closing. Ethan waited. Rex suddenly rushed up the stairs. Ethan followed. When they reached the barn, the main doors were still chained shut. But a side door stood open. A woman ran across the field. She was wearing a dark raincoat and carrying a black bag. Stop, she kept running. Rex sprinted after her. Within seconds, the dog caught up. The woman stumbled and fell into the wet grass. Ethan reached her and secured her hands. She was breathing heavily. Her face was pale. Where's the girl? Ethan demanded. The woman looked toward the barn. Then she began crying. You don't understand. Then explain. She shook her head. I was trying to protect her. Sophia came running from the barn. Ethan, he turned. Sophia held a small key. I found this in the basement. The woman saw it and immediately stopped crying. You can't use that. Why? Because that room isn't the real prison. Ethan stared at her. What does that mean? The woman looked toward the barn. There is another room beneath it. Sophia's face went pale. How many rooms? The woman whispered. 3. Ethan looked at Rex. The dog was already staring toward the barn again. They returned underground. Sophia unlocked the steel door. Inside was a tiny room with a mattress, blankets, bottled water, and medical supplies. Emily Harper was sitting against the wall. She looked frightened but alive. Sophia immediately rushed to her. Emily, I'm a doctor. Let me check you. Emily nodded. Her hands were shaking. Ethan looked around the room. Who brought you here? Emily looked at the woman they had arrested. Then she whispered, She did. The woman began crying again. I didn't kidnap her. Ethan frowned. Then why was she here? Emily answered before the woman could. Because she was hiding me from my father. The entire corridor went silent. Sophia carefully examined Emily while Ethan questioned the woman. Her name was Laura Harper. She was Emily's aunt. 3 weeks earlier, Laura had discovered that Emily's father was involved with a dangerous criminal group. He had been using Emily to transport stolen documents without her knowing what they were. When Emily realized something was wrong, she tried to tell someone. Her father found out. Laura took Emily and hid her in the underground room beneath the barn. But there was one problem. Laura wasn't the only person who knew about the barn. Ethan looked at her. Who else knows? Laura hesitated. My brother, Emily's father. She nodded. He found out yesterday. Sophia immediately looked toward the corridor. Then we need to move her. A loud metallic sound echoed from somewhere beneath them. Rex's head snapped toward the floor. He began barking again. Ethan followed the dog. Rex stopped beside a section of concrete wall. Sophia looked at it. There must be another entrance. Ethan searched the wall. Behind an old electrical panel, he found a concealed lever. He pulled it. A section of the wall opened. Beyond it was another tunnel. The air smelled of gasoline. They entered carefully. The tunnel led beneath the neighboring field. Then they saw several large plastic containers filled with gasoline boxes of stolen electronics and dozens of sealed envelopes. Sophia stared at the evidence. This isn't just about Emily. Ethan nodded. This is a distribution site. Suddenly Rex growled. A vehicle engine started somewhere above them. Ethan ran toward the tunnel exit. Through a narrow opening, he saw a black pickup truck approaching the barn. A man stepped out. Emily immediately recognized him. My dad, Sophia, moved Emily behind her. Ethan raised his radio. Backup is on the way. But the radio suddenly went dead. The man entered the barn. His footsteps moved toward the hidden staircase. Ethan positioned himself behind the wall. Rex stood beside him. The suspect reached the underground corridor. Then he stopped. He knew someone was there. Emily. The girl trembled. Sophia held her close. The man stepped toward the steel door. Come out. Ethan waited. Then Rex barked. The suspect suddenly pulled a weapon. Ethan moved instantly. Police, drop it. The man froze. Rex lunged forward, knocking the weapon from his hand. Ethan secured him within seconds. The barn fell silent. Emily began crying. Sophia knelt beside her. You're safe now. But Ethan wasn't looking at Emily. He was staring at Rex. The dog had returned to the hidden wall. He was barking again. Ethan walked over. What did you find? Rex scratched at the concrete. Ethan removed a loose section. Behind it was a metal box. Inside were photographs, financial records, and a list of names. One name appeared at the top. A local police detective. Ethan's face went pale. Someone inside the department had been helping the criminals. The discovery changed everything. The investigation was no longer just about a missing girl or a criminal operation hidden beneath an abandoned barn. It had reached inside the police department itself. Ethan immediately secured the evidence and contacted the state investigators, directly bypassing local channels. Within hours, the names from the metal box were being checked against bank records, phone records, and old case files. Sophia stayed with Emily at the hospital. Laura remained under protection. And Rex refused to leave the evidence room. For 2 days, the German Shepherd stayed beside Ethan whenever investigators opened another box or examined another document. Then the first arrest was made. The detective, whose name appeared at the top of the list, was taken into custody before he could destroy any evidence. He eventually confessed. For years, he had been helping the criminal group move stolen goods through abandoned properties around Blackwood. The barn had been one of their main storage locations. But there was something he hadn't expected. Emily's father had become suspicious. He wanted to leave the organization. The group decided to silence him. Laura discovered the plan and hid Emily before they could reach her. That explained the secret rooms. It explained the supplies. It explained why Laura had risked everything to keep the girl alive. But it didn't explain Rex. Ethan returned to the barn one final time. The storm had passed. Morning sunlight entered through the broken roof. Rex walked slowly across the empty barn floor. He stopped at the same place where he had first begun barking. Ethan crouched beside him. "What did you smell?" Rex lowered his nose. Then he scratched at the dirt. Ethan moved the soil aside. A small piece of cloth appeared. It belonged to Emily's backpack. Ethan looked towards Sophia. She had returned from the hospital. "You think he smelled her scent?" Sophia smiled. He probably smelled something much more important. Ethan raised an eyebrow. What Sophia looked at. Rex. Someone had been inside recently. Ethan smiled. That's why he wouldn't stop. Rex sat beside them, calm at last. The barn that everyone believed was empty had never truly been empty. It had contained a frightened girl, a hidden criminal operation, a secret tunnel, and evidence of corruption that could have remained buried for years. But none of it would have been discovered if Rex had simply walked away. That evening, Ethan drove Sophia and Rex back toward town. Emily was safe. Laura was under protection. The corrupt detective was in custody. And the investigation was finally beginning to uncover the full network behind the operation. As the patrol SUV disappeared down the country road, Rex rested his head against the window. Ethan glanced into the rearview mirror. "You know, buddy," Rex looked at him, "you were right to keep barking." Sophia smiled from the passenger seat. "Sometimes the thing everyone thinks is empty is exactly where the truth is hiding." Ethan looked back at the dark silhouette of the barn in the distance. For a moment, Rex lifted his head, but this time he didn't bark. He simply watched, because the mystery was over. And the police dog had once again refused to ignore what everyone else had failed to see